All right, everybody. So welcome to the webinar. Today is Back to the Drawing Board, Sketching Out SCORM. My name is Chris Tompkins. I'm a director of sales. You've also got Joe Donnelly here with me, which is our customer support manager at Rustici. We're going to be talking through a bunch of the basics. But before we dive into this topic, I think it would be interesting for us to all kind of draw some ideas about what we think these e-learning concepts are. So we've selected a few folks from the audience here on this webinar, and we're putting them on the hot seat. And right now, if you look at my screen, you will notice that it says time to draw. All of these participants are now sketching out with their fingers as fast as they can some common e-learning terms. If you open your web browser or your phone's web browser, you'll notice at the top left-hand corner, there are 4 pink letters, S, J, C, K. If you go to Jackbox TV in any of your browsers, you should be able to log in, and you guys are going to help us pick a winner today. So please feel free to log in as these little pencils crawl across the screen. You're mostly going to sit back, but here in just a minute, we're going to go through a round. You guys might have played Pictionary. We're going to play Guess Who Draw It. And then there's also going to be a fun moment where you can give superlatives to funny drawings, funny answers. So be sure to throw those in as well. I've been prompted to draw a piece of software in front of me now, and I'm going to do that real quick here with my magic finger button. In this phase of the game, we're going to look at this picture together, and it's time for everybody to kind of imagine, what is it? So those of us who are already in the game can guess. Those of you who have chose to log in and enter those 4 letters at the top hand corner can throw in a guess. I'm not allowed to pick, which means this might be my drawing. So it'll be interesting to see how many of our participants here can enter the right words. But the fun part about this game is that everybody else who's drawing gets to write in words that they think are correct. And these guys are all going to try and trick you. So it's a blend of my terrible artistic skills and their cleverness to write in something meaningful. And as soon as everybody submits our answers, we'll go to the next phase. So those of you who are playing, if you can go ahead and type in those words and take your guess, and we can advance. All right. So everybody who's on the webinar and playing the game with us as an audience member, what is it? Is it, I don't know, I don't care, completion status, completed, completed course, complete training, or learning management system? So those of you playing, if you can go ahead and pick your answer, here we go. Complete training. Ooh, Joe, good trick. Most of the audience thought you were the right answer as well. Here we have a completion status. Sarah, always a tricky player. Completed course, it's also a good guess. Did anybody get the right answer? It's not looking good for me. Oof. There we go. So that was a learning management system. And I think to most people who use them every day, it's a record of completions. That's the value of that program. And sure, it helps us do so many more things, but it's the first thing that often comes to mind when we think of that LMS term. So this time I get to draw or guess what it is and participate a little bit more. Let's see, it's a zip, this is big 4. I'm gonna guess this is a, so currently we're deciding what we think this is. I like that the audience is participating. This is surely the most players we've had in this game in a while, and that makes me excited. And the big 4 is an interesting term. Those of you guys who know SCORM really well know that the big 4 are time spent, completion status, pass-fail status, and score, which are some of the most common metrics that people want to track while playing in the e-learning industry. So what is it? E-learning file, SCORM, SCORM package, SCORM 1.2 PIF. That's a very specific thing there. A package, a zip file larger than 4 gigs. I'm going to take my guess. Wow. Cameron, home run. Perfect score. You're right. Zip, big 4. Cameron was drawing for his audience here. in those of us who play in these standards all the time, that's a key concept that people want. And it's one of the key advantages of SCORM that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. All right, on to our next drawing here, 80%, a little progress bar. Interesting drawing. So 80% is something I think all of us are kind of centering ideas around. These LMS systems want to keep up with how people are interacting with content. The big four was completion status. That's the very first one to most people. But in this particular drawing, we can choose between completion, goals, incomplete status, completion status, a little progress bar, or progress measure. And I think this one's going to be a little harder for the artist to win some points on. Let me go ahead and make my guess. For those of you who are joining a little late, you can still get in on the action. At the top left-hand corner of the screen, you'll notice there's jackbox.tv. Go ahead and open any old browser and you're going to be able to vote on the late stage of the game, and you can influence how we play it. Once you get there, if you'll just enter those 4 letters, SJCK, you'll be able to participate a little more actively. So we had some guesses for completion. Cam, your success of last round is not continued here. Completion status. Oof, good guess, Sarah, but we were wrong. We got most of the audience too. Nice one. Nice. Good job, Jim. Incomplete status. So this is also something that's interesting in SCORM. Completion status can be unknown, it can be complete, it can be incomplete. And for folks trying to monitor learning, this is one of the key metrics that we always want to keep up with. And we'll certainly talk about it here in just a moment when we go through the basics. I have no idea what this is, and I've seen most of the answer bank. So this skilled artist is going to trick us all. We often get asked when people are starting to play in their LMS, especially for the first time, about a lot of the words you see on the screen here. I need a report card. Where's my answer key? I need to see interactions with this data. Learning and training reports are important for this next objective. This is a grade book. How do I get grades in a grade book? That's a common question, especially in Moodle-based deployments. These are all really around what I think is the valuable part of learning, and some of the things that these e-learning standards save a lot of headache, time, complexity, and building reports. So Jim guessed grade book. I think it was a good one. He got me. Reporting. Picked up a good chunk of the audience there. Oh, Sarah on her own. All right, so looking at the scoreboard here, Jim came away. Cameron is in a solid first place. Sarah might be able to catch him, but it's not looking good. I think this might be one of our final drawings here. What could this be? A square going into a person and a file.
It's a mystery, isn't it, Chris?
I know, Joe.
It wasn't my drawing, I promise.
Is this your drawing?
100%.
Huh. Are you sure you know what these words mean?
I was going with the dictionary rules.
What they think this is, and this is certainly the one that the participants are taking their time with more than any other. If everybody could type in their answers and click submit, we'll get to guess. I have to admit, Joe, I don't know what this is.
I think I remember what I drew.
Are you sure you're not left-handed? All right, feeding paper to a robot's face may or may not be true. Human capital, course submission, blurry, off-the-shelf training, or dispatch. I honestly don't know. I'm going to take a logical guess here. I like that so many of the audience is taking a stab at this with us. I'm interested to see who got the most of the audience vote on this one. Dispatch. Sarah, that was a good guess. We'll talk about dispatch. It's pretty cool. Probably a SCORM 201 thing, but certainly interesting. I thought it was a course submission. Liz, good guess there. Off the shelf training. Cameron, Jim, Sarah believe it's true. Most of the audience got it right too. Way to go, Joe. I see that now. It's a bookshelf.
It's a shelf.
Courses on the shelf going into a person. That makes a lot
and I'm
of sense.
taking it off the shelf.
All right, that concludes the game. You guys can close your browsers. We're going to get into the meat of it here. I would like to give Jim special thanks, but Joe, I think the biggest award is being most popular most of the time. So good job. You continue to hold on to your rank as most lovable SCORM expert in the world. I will then kind of turn our attention somewhere else, guys. Thank you for hanging in there for the silly part. Let me go ahead and start our actual presentation today. Joe and I have been doing this a long time, and it's very important to both of us that we talk through SCORM with folks in a comfortable way. So many of the technologies that we use day in and day out can be a real pain. And so I think it's important to realize that SCORM doesn't have to be hard. Your 101 introduction to SCORM should be fun and comfortable, and that's really the theme that we wanted to put out today. So thanks everybody for hanging in there, and thanks for joining this part of it. I'm Chris Tompkins. I'm our director of sales. I talk to people about SCORM all day. I love it. It's quite literally my job, but it's something that we've been doing for a long time. And I think once people understand the tools that they've got in their toolbox, it makes it really easy to go out and build things that are compelling. Joe's our customer support manager. He's our longest running SCORM employee. Joe's been here forever. And if any of you guys have had technical questions before, you've likely run into Joe. And if you've got them in the future, you're likely going to run into Joe. I know you spend a lot of time, Joe, talking people through these things just like I do. And so thanks for being here and going through our presentation together. So what we'll cover today, we're going to talk about SCORMworks, why it's here, why it matters, why you should use it, why you shouldn't. Tips for creating and publishing content. We need to be able to walk you guys through how to get up to speed quickly and what tools you can use to make progress so that we're not just talking in the theoretical here about SCORM today. How to take those next steps with testing, that's going to be Joe's world. And then look, LMSs are important and they're the other side of the coin. SCORM really breaks down into two things: building e-learning content that plays and tracks the same way, and an LMS or learning management system to begin to keep up with those things. So about us, we've been doing this a long time. Our customers are traditionally authoring tools. So if you're using things like Captivate, Storyline, Domino's, Claro, many others, we help you save as SCORM. The package behind the scenes is typically our software so that those guys don't have to be SCORM experts. That's what we do. But it often means that we're intimately familiar with the content you have in front of us. And our attitude since 2002 has been ask us anything, really. Guys, what we're not is consultants. We have a bunch of products. We typically don't go out and consult in your e-learning industry. If you have questions about how to make this stuff go, you should ask us because we have answers. So what are all these standards? A lot of the questions that came in the pre-survey were explain some of these weird acronyms. Okay, so AICC was one of the first standards on the market. The Aviation Industry Computer-Based Training Committee created it. And it was kind of the first step towards this package that can be moved around that we'll talk about in a while. AICC is still out in the wild. It's governed by ADL today. We still see content. It's a valuable tool. It's not going anywhere. I think people continue to use it, but it did come up a little short of, I think, what the world wanted out of being able to play nicely in the e-learning industry. That takes us a little later into the Shareable Content Object Reference Model, SCORM. Not many people say that all the way out. You probably won't hear it too often on the way forward. SCORM is a package that moves between devices, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second. IMS LTI, a whole different group. ADL is the United States Department of Defense arm that is ultimately responsible for these e-learning standards. Rustici's worked closely with them for many years, and we're going to continue to. But there is another group out there called the IMS Consortium, and we also participate in that, and they offer tools like LTI, which is one we support in many of our products and can be a great way without packages and files to move people through links. Pretty slick. Sometimes it's the right tool to use. XAPI is the latest and greatest from the ADL arm. We helped create that through Project Tin Can. You've probably heard of Tin Can before, and that was certainly the early work of the research. And now we have the Training and Learning Architecture Experience API to begin to fill some advanced needs. There is a webinar a week from now that's going to go deep into XAPI. So I'm going to kind of skip over that today, But if you guys want to attend that and you want to participate in the game, let me know, and we'll certainly go into those details next week. CMI 5 is also part of kind of next week's conversation to tee that up. XAPI is how platforms communicate. CMI 5 is what they're saying, but we'll go into all of that at a later time. Basics of SCORM, guys. It's the only time in tech that I can think of where something's age is its strength. Interoperability. I find it really remarkable that the only piece of software on my modern iPhone that I've bothered to put on every other device I've kept in my pocket since the 90s is the MP3. I certainly had an iPod, I had a Zune. I was super proud of the Zune. I don't know why, but that was the thing I really liked having in my pocket at the time. But guys, the MP3 is a file that moves between applications. And when you hit the triangle button, it renders on the screen. And it likely rolls what we were talking about in that game, the big four: time, completion, pass, fail, and score. Those are the basics. And whether you check each other's knowledge in the hallway after this conversation, or we bust out a number 2 pencil and do some Scantron sheets, or you use a modern e-learning course, are you working on this or are you done? Did you pass or did you fail? What was your score? And if I took 2.5 hours and Joe took 2.5 minutes, well, that's interesting too. So those are kind of the basics that people want. But if we think about an MP3, you kind of have the two sides of the coin that you have with SCORM. Authoring and building content. We could do that in tools like GarageBand or Pro Tools. Joe, Jim, and I could start a band tomorrow, and we would use the right software to help us make our art. But we would save it as an MP3 so that we didn't have to think about, oh, they're going to be playing it on a car. We should save it as a different format. No, their phones are, that wouldn't work. We're artists. We want to build music. The MP3 is the thing that lets it go out into the industry. And when you hit the triangle button, it plays on whatever device you want. The other thing that the MP3 does is it allows for off the shelf. It allows for people to share and collaborate and sell and expand and put their art where it needs to be, just like SCORM. So many off-the-shelf content libraries from large providers will hand you SCORM files. And it's a similar structure to the way that we see things working in the music industry. And then finally, there's play. I rented a car the other day and you could shove a thumb drive into the dash and play MP3s. As an e-learning nerd, as a guy trying to help two people play nicely with one another, guys, that's really hard to do globally. MP3 has made its way around the world, and just because it's old, no one looks at it and says we should get rid of this. In fact, everybody's leaning into it because it's that repeatability. So SCORM isn't the type of thing that you should worry about its age. You should worry about its utility. And when it comes to building a course that will play the same way and track the big four the same way every time, SCORM 1.2 is kind of like the MP3. And I think you should use the tool in the toolbox that suits you best. So to build on that, any SCORM conformant content should play in any SCORM conformant LMS. Your MP3s don't sound different on my phone than they do on your phone or in your car or on your laptop. They're gonna make the same sounds. SCORM should play the same way. It's kind of the boring side of our job. We're here to make sure your courses play the way you want and track the way you want, but that's also important, and it can also be difficult. Standard page turner courses played within an LMS. This drawing nails it, right? The SCORM is often a beginning, a middle, an end, and an assessment. That's valuable. It's part of learning. It's certainly not the entirety of the learning journey, but it is certainly the compliance part, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. It is a valuable part of what we do. So realize, though, that SCORM can be any multimedia that fits in a web browser. It can be video, it can be audio, it can be nonlinear. SCORM accounts for all types of crazy assessments. The abilities of SCORM are pretty deep, but it's up to the content creator to build what they want and use the right toolbox in the tool in the toolbox to deploy those and track those the way that you want. SCORM can include an assessment. It's really helpful when you want to track something like score, but it doesn't have to. Assessments in SCORM can get pretty advanced and complex, again, depending on the version that you want to use. And SCORM does a pretty good job of not only tracking performance progress, but SCORM also rolls up into standard reports really cleanly. That way, the person building the course doesn't have to then open the LMS, often their client, or other division and build a custom report that fits with. SCORM does all of that behind the scenes. You can build something once, you can kick it into a learning management system in LMS, and it will play the same way, and it will become a part of whatever reports they have. That type of utility is the power of SCORM. And again, its age and its interoperability are its strengths. Why should you care? Well, you should care about SCORM if you're building content. If you kind of have that music mentality, I want to build my thing and I want to go out in the world and I want it to have that same performance, you should care about SCORM. SCORM's going to be the easiest way to bundle that up so it plays the same way every time, it babysits the learner the same way every time. That's the power of SCORM. We're going to be using an LMS and manage different e-learning content. That's often the way the modern e-learning ecosystems work today. And so it's important, I think, to make sure that if you're in an environment that already has SCORM, this is a valuable tool in your toolbox, and it can help you fold easily into existing systems. If you don't have a SCORM player, SCORM might not be the right tool for you. Our SCORM Cloud can offer some easy ways to help you get up to speed with that, but feel the pain. There's two sides. There's building content and then there's playing and tracking content, and you need both in order for a SCORM ecosystem to properly function. You can also use SCORM as a way to just grab the courses you need. Lockout, tagout training, cool. Like there's a lot of it out there and it's probably similar to what you need. Maybe it's more cost effective to get a off-the-shelf course, and then you don't have to do a custom integration with that provider. Just get the SCORM course, play it in your SCORM LMS, you should be good to go. And then using the authoring tool to create a course that would be played in an LMS or learning platform. SCORM is not unique to LMSs. SCORM can also be a part of training systems and human resource systems and employee portals. I've seen SCORM players stuck in all types of different software, and so you can be pretty free thinking because SCORM players can kind of go where you need them to go. And that's the other thing that Rustici does. We help people save as SCORM, but Rustici also has SCORM players hidden behind the scenes in many of the largest LMSs, all types of custom employee portals within organizations. We've dumped things on websites. If you need learning to happen somewhere talk to us. We're here to help you find the right systems that have the SCORM player you need, and we can probably add them to things that haven't had them today. The expectations, again, of SCORM are Big Four plus bookmarking. SCORM is going to automatically track where the learner left off, so if they leave and come back, we put them back where they need to be. That's a very valuable thing, and it can be one of the most frustrating things to not have, is watch all of this stuff and start back at the beginning because the phone rang. SCORM does a pretty good job of dropping those bookmarks and helping those learners be engaged and stay engaged and learn when they can and be flexible. Those are some of the advantages. And then finally, interactions. If the course is created to do it, it's the burden of the person building the course to choose how much or how little of the Big Four to include. Those are the things that are like individual answers, whether they're right or wrong, which most people don't know you can do and can be very valuable in SCORM, but it might require a more advanced version of SCORM like SCORM 2004. So what are all these versions? Guys, different tools in the toolbox for different needs. When I work on my car, I can grab a screwdriver, a socket, or a wrench. Well, they're all the same tool. They all turn a threaded bolt. No, they're not. One is easier to use than the other, depending on the situation you find yourself in. And I think it's very important to understand when to grab these tools, not necessarily everything there is to know about these tools. So SCORM 1.1 exists, but you're never going to see it. SCORM 1.2, I've never seen in my 10 years around. SCORM 1.2 is the most common. So it's certainly the oldest functional version, but SCORM 2004 is an incomplete statement. SCORM 2004 comes in 3 different editions, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. They don't play nicely with one another. There's no backwards compatibility among them or with SCORM 1.2. Effectively, there are 4 unique SCORM players out in the world: SCORM 1.2, SCORM 2004 2nd, SCORM 2004 3rd, SCORM 2004 4th, and your mileage may vary depending on those, but there's a right and a wrong time to use one over another. And I think SCORM 1.2 is perfect for beginning, middle, end, and an assessment. Guys, if you're not doing anything fancy, please don't make it harder on yourself. But Joe's very passionate about SCORM 2004 third and fourth because it unlocks a lot of things for instructional designers that I think are important. Don't use SCORM 2004 fourth edition because it's the newest and we're in tech and you should just use the latest and greatest. This is one of those weird moments where that's not true. For a lot of people, SCORM 1.2 is just the easiest way. It works in Moodle. You've got Moodle, you've got an authoring tool. Have a nice day. Adding SCORM 2004 to that situation for the sake of it is hard. But if you need the things SCORM 2004 is doing, the juice might be worth the squeeze. So Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you deal with these things in depth every day. Keep us out of the weeds, but what do these people need to know?
I will do my very best. So, yeah, the big difference between, at least I see the big difference between SCORM 1.2 and the versions of SCORM 2004 that are out there is that SCORM 2004 handed the power over to the content to basically handle its own business. SCORM 1.2 leans on the LMS for certain things. SCORM 2004 says, nope, I'm going to do this stuff myself. I'm going to decide things. First off, there's this concept of suspend data. Suspend data is a place for a SCORM course to put its stuff. It can put whatever it wants in there. In SCORM 1.2 and in SCORM 2004 second edition, there's a small bucket for it to put its stuff. Some authoring tools and just some SCORM courses like to put things like interactions, any sort of information that the course needs to have for a relaunch later, anything like that, it'll put in there. For SCORM 2004 third and fourth edition, they actually increase the size of that bucket so that you can put a lot of stuff in there. Sequencing and navigation. So the way a course will sequence and move through a multi-scope course or a multi-module course, in SCORM 2004, the onus to handle that navigation was put in the hands of the course. Before that, in SCORM 1.2, the LMS handled how you move through it. So in SCORM 2004, you can actually create some really elegant ways to navigate through certain modules. And the big one is interactions. As Chris was saying, interactions are a great piece of reporting for you to analyze your assessments, to make sure that you're asking the right questions, the users or learners are answering them correctly. If they're not, then maybe I need to look at the way I'm asking these questions. The things you can get in SCORM 2004 are things like what the actual question did the learner answer, their response to that question in full, did they answer it correctly? What is the correct answer? And then lately, a lot of people have been asking for latency. So how long did it take them to answer from the moment that they were shown the interaction to when they actioned on it? With SCORM 1.2, there is an interactions model, but it's much simpler. It is mostly just IDs. So,
all right.
Moving on, some general SCORM concepts. We tend to look at SCORM communication like a phone call. So you're going to pick up the receiver, dial a number, and then talk. In this case, there's going to be an initialization. So the SCORM course asking the LMS for the SCORM API, and then a series of get and set values. So a series of the course asking the LMS for things and then setting things. The things it can get set are status, score, time, interactions like we discussed, bookmarking, and then it can commit data. So it's going to commit and then submit that information so that the LMS can save it to its database, and then close communication. So the two mandatory things amongst all of this is the initialization and the termination of that communication. So the picking up the phone and the hanging up of the phone are the two mandatory things that have to happen. Everything else is kind of gravy in between.
But it is the authoring person's job to choose how much of that to communicate back and forth between picking up the phone and hanging it up. And your content will only be as good as what you choose to embed. So use SCORM in the right way for these things.
Absolutely. So some best practices while we're all here. These are just a couple of things that we have seen while talking to people over the last, for me, for the last 12 years. make sure your course is communicating with the player in an effective manner. So when it's asking for the SCORM API, make sure it's not just searching that first window, make sure it's searching parent windows as well. So you don't end up in a situation where your course asks for the SCORM API, looks in the window that it might have been popped in, and then says, not there. All right, error. You need to look in the parent window as well. Setting status. You want to do that almost immediately after you initialize. This gets you away from situations where if for some reason you initialize communication and the course never gets to set status, you could get what we would call a false completion. Because if the course doesn't set a status and the learner leaves, times out, anything like that, if there is no status set, the LMS could assume completion. You should definitely bookmark. There's no easier way to a salty learner than to have them take an hour and a half worth of training and then they walk away to go do whatever they need to do during the day, come back and their course is timed out, and then when they go to relaunch it, they start over. So definitely bookmark when you can. Record completion in a way that the LMS can capture it. So what I'm really saying is don't set your completion on exit. Set completion at some point towards the end of your course and allow your course to do number 5, exit gracefully. Whether that be, well, what I would prefer to see is an exit button. So the learner can click on that button and then the course can say, okay, I'm exiting. And then it can put all of its books back on the shelf, if you will, close itself down, unload, and then be done. And then this one is getting to be, believe it or not, we're still talking about it. Don't use Flash anymore, y'all. It's probably a good idea, if you haven't already done so, to go ahead and start converting your Flash courses to HTML5 because Flash is going away.
And Flash is just a thing inside SCORM. So SCORM supports Flash, but if you try to play that Flash course on a mobile device, SCORM will launch, the course will play, but when it hits that Flash portion, it will break. So there's nothing SCORM can do to help you with that problem, but there's also, it's not SCORM's problem as it goes. So as we look at common issues, Joe, can you just quickly talk through what are some of the things that people have pains with?
So this is the big one, the why didn't I get it completed? Why didn't my course complete? Why didn't I pass? That sort of thing. These are items, these are problems that we try our best to work through with our clients to get them to make sure that their courses are doing all the things they need to do, and then it's being launched in a way that that the LMS can capture that information. So real quickly, a question we get asked is, well, what does complete mean? Well, complete really just means whatever your course, has to do to get it completed. The LMS really isn't going to have a ton of input here, except for in the ways that we talked about earlier. Completion could be based on getting to the end of the course. It could be based on something that the learner chooses in the course. It could be hinged upon a success status that says, hey, he or she mastered the course. Well, they get it passed. Well, they're also completed. The things that can get in the way, pop-up blockers. You could pop up the course in multiple windows, and maybe a window gets closed that doesn't need to be closed, which closes the player window. Mobile environments have their own set of problems that come along with them. Now, we've solved a lot of those problems through what we call package properties of how we launch and whatnot. But we found that most mobile environments want to be launched in a frame set, but then you also need to make sure your learner has a way out, so they have an exit button so that they can close properly. And then things like the synchronous postback issue with Chrome 80, which is a pain that pretty much everybody has felt. We have worked hard to stay ahead of that for our clients and to make sure that all of our products are patched to be able to handle the changes that Chrome put out there. But if you run into problems like this, even if you aren't using one of our products, these are the things that we would love to hear about and help with.
So this is just a smattering, guys. Lots of things go weird with SCORM. You're not on your own. Ask us anything really. The simple address, support@scorm.com, goes to Joe. Ask us anything. We're not counting hours. We're not racking up a bill. We're here to help you with these type of hard problems. So along those lines, testing and troubleshooting. Guys, everyone on this call can have a free SCORM Cloud account. Sign up, log in, upload your content, hit play. You'll see the big four. You'll see how it plays. There's a debug log. We can help you look under the hood. You're not on your own. We have a whole team of people here to help you troubleshoot these type of issues. You can sign up for free. Everyone on your team can have a free call. You should be benchmarking and testing things in SCORM, and especially if you're a content creator, ask us why something isn't working the way that you want, and we can point you on the path towards the right solution. If you're an LMS administrator and content is working in SCORM Cloud and not in your system, let us know. We've seen a lot of LMSs, and we can begin to poke at those things. Facts are friendly, and these tools help you get to the facts so that you can begin to solve hard problems. That takes us to the other side of the coin, which is the learning management system. I know, Joe, earlier you were kind of talking about LMSs, and they're all a little different, but are there any defaults, especially around like timeout? You mentioned that it's something that learners do. Is there a default across all LMSs for a timeout? If so, what is it? Like, talk to me about that a little bit.
It really depends on the LMS. Timeouts can be set from both sides, from the core side and from the LMS side. I actually prefer timeouts to happen from the core side because it knows best what is activity, how long they should be taking the course. If someone's watching a long video, we don't know if they're actually at their computer or, you know, riding a bike or doing whatever. So LMSs have those things. However, I prefer to see the course do that.
That's right. It's generally the person building the course that gets to choose those things. And any LMS behavior that messes with the course is typically forced behavior instead of ideal behavior. That's it. The LMS manages courses, it manages learners, it manages reports, but the LMS often just plays and tracks what an e-learning designer wanted to happen. So things to ask of your content provider when you're going out and getting content. What standards do you support? What happens when you update courses? There can be some real pains around that we have tricks for. How often are your courses updated? Can I try a course or two in my LMS? Can the data be exported to other platforms? Guys, if they can give you a sample of your content, you should check it in SCORM Cloud to make sure that it plays and tracks the way that you want and that it does the things that are compatible with your system. As much as I like SCORM Cloud, you should test it in your own LMS. And that's an important part of a content provider because doing a custom API integration with somebody else's platform can be a pain. If you're an LMS admin and you want to manage things in one spot and see reporting in one spot, these guys have to give you compatible content at the end of the day. So guys, ask us anything really is our motto day in and day out. I wanted to leave a little time at the end here to be able to open the floor a little bit to questions and answers. I know Tara's behind the scenes here kind of bubbling some things up. I really want to say thank you to our artists, our voters, everyone for attending today. It's always flattering when people want to learn about SCORM from Joe and I because we do it all day, every day. This isn't our only opportunity to talk. Joe and I have time in our day for everyone on this call to explore these things, to test. We have a whole team of people standing behind us to help you guys get into the weeds. This is the one thing we know how to do, and we're always flattered when we're able to help. So helping two e-learning products get along is what we really focus on. And in order to make that happen, we need to have those conversations with you guys. So I want to leave that door open. One of the questions that I get here in the chat is, I'm still very surprised how SCORM is still surviving. Do you see an end of life for it sometime soon? No, I think SCORM probably has 10 or 20 years of life left in it, especially when I go to some of our larger conferences with the government sectors or large corporate sectors. Asking them to get rid of SCORM for the sake of a new standard is too much pain. Guys, there's so many e-learning transactions flying around the world. I mean, streaming is certainly something that the music industry is pivoting into, but they're still streaming MP3s. So no, I think MP3 is here for a while because it solves a simple problem. a package that can move between devices, that plays the same way and tracks the same way, it's not broken. I think there are things that are going to augment it. I think Rustici does some things through SCORM 1.2 that are advancements, but these basics are super fundamentally important for the e-learning industry. And I think we're going to be with SCORM, specifically SCORM 1.2, for quite a while. How do you expect SCORM 2004 adoption to grow? How long before it's a good idea to work with SCORM 2004 as the primary version? I don't know that it's ever going to be the primary version. Moodle, as an easy example, doesn't support SCORM 2004 third or fourth out of the box today. It's a real pain. So I think SCORM 1.2 is the benchmark, but guys, I can play SCORM 2004 content in SCORM 1.2 only LMSs. Don't let that scare you. Pull the tool out of the toolbox for the right reasons. Use SCORM 2004 because you got to track advanced stuff. We will help you solve the interoperability problem because that's the easier part of this. Finally, I think it's a great question as we begin to wrap our time here. Where does SCORM end and XAPI begin? All right, that's a great question that we'll talk about next week in detail, but you can really think about that as being SCORM is in a web browser, guys. You log into an LMS, you clicked play, you took a course with a beginning, a middle, an end, and an assessment. You got a green check mark next to your name. Cool. That's where SCORM ends. SCORM can't handle anything that's not in that active web browser session launched by an LMS. Think about all the training that happens after you get your green check mark at most organizations. That's the moment where XAPI begins. Chris did a barrel roll in a flight simulator, revived a dummy, worked on the assembly line, was a part of a mentorship program, attended a meeting, had a bunch of phone calls, was a part of a cohort. Those are the things that XAPI's noun verb object structure, Chris did this, can enable. And we're going to go into deep detail again next week. That's the XAPI conversation. We're going to draw some games. If you want to play, tell me. Just email us. I'll put you on there. You can participate. But again, we're going to sketch out some of our preconceived notions about XAPI, and then Joe and I are going to go deep into where it departs from SCORM. So guys, thank you for being here. Joe and I are always flattered that so many people would show up to listen to us explore the things that we know so well and that we talk about every day. Ask us anything really now, later, next week. We hope we get to see you all again. I appreciate your time. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.